Hi, everybody. It's Mr. Bob again, and time for reading another chapter of Street Shadows. Hope you're enjoying this book. I certainly am. Like I said before, never read this book, and reading a new book for the first time is always an adventure. Sometimes things come up that you don't expect, and you get to read things that perhaps you had never considered before. One of the things about reading a book about animals in an anthropomorphic kind of way, in other words, reading it as if they were human, that it gives you a perspective about things that perhaps you hadn't considered before. We often think of animals as dangerous, but sometimes, even though they aren't human, still they have the same kind of worries that maybe most of us do. How to stay alive, how to stay safe, and all those kind of things. Um, you know, I think one of these books is important, and these kind of books are important, just like Peak is important, because it helps us understand when the teachers and the other staff at school say we need you to do this to stay safe. These kind of books give you a good example of why that might be. The kind of things about what it means to be safe and why it's important to be careful about things. And some things that seem to be harmless sometimes aren't. So, anyway, those are good things I think for all of us to take into consideration. Anyway, this is chapter 5, Crossing. As Pika's group decide that they're going to go onto the roads and cross the highway. So, it starts with Pika. Pika repeated the 3 rules to herself as she followed her family. No humans, no fooling around, no other coyotes. It all seemed so simple, but she still had so many questions. What made humans so dangerous? How fast did you need to move across the road to avoid the cars? What were the other coyotes like? And could she really not talk to any of them? She had hoped that she would find out the answers to all her questions soon. They reached the rock wall that served as the border between the hillside and the road. As Pika scrambled over it, she realized how much bigger she was than the last time she had stood next to it. Now she was able to jump over it nimbly to the top and scramble down to the other side. She joined her family, who was huddled under some bushes that lay by the side of the road. Pika squirmed to the front beside her mother and peered into the darkness. You'd never just cross, Gree instructed. Find a place to wait and then listen carefully. Feel that? That rumble in the ground that you can feel in your paws means a car is coming. Now you can hear it. Here it comes. Pika looked down the road and saw a blinding spot rushing straight at her. It almost seemed like it would mow the bushes over with their whole family in its path. She fought the urge to close her eyes, staring hard as the car whipped right past them, with just a few feet to spare. She heard Sage yell for help, and the branches on the bushes whistled back and forth as the wake hit them. There, it's over. So you have to learn to not be afraid of that. The cars stay on the pavement. You need to stay off the pavement until you are sure it is safe. We'll go in 2 groups. Gree looked back, thinking. Another car whipped by, and this time it didn't scare Pika as much. She looked at it as it passed, exchanging smiles with Kai. Okay, daredevils, Gree continued, nodding at Pika and Kai with a smile. You come first. Dane and Sage, go next with Lamar. Pika's heart jumped. She grinned at Kai, who grinned back nervously. At that moment, a truck roared past, louder and brighter than the previous 2 cars. Both Pika and Dane jumped. Look and listen. Feel the vibrations with your paws. All clear? Gree asked them. Pika waited. All she felt was her own breath, coming in sharply and out of her lungs. All clear, she replied. Okay, 1, 2, 3, now! Gree barked with an intensity that they could not ignore. All 3 coyotes scrambled up to the pavement and galloped across the road. Pika couldn't see to the other side, not wanting to see a bright light bearing down on her. She didn't even breathe in, begging her muscles to work harder and harder. Just as she reached the other side, she tripped over something on the road and somersaulted forward. Regaining her balance quickly, she drove off the side of the road, rolling into the bushes. Kai rolled down after her and landed on her. They all laughed in relief. Wow, that was scarier than I thought it would be, Pika told him. Ha, that was nothing, Kai replied with a grin. That is not true. You were totally scared. Pika jumped on him as she said this. Pika growled at her. Don't mess around. And with your bad eye, you need to concentrate harder. You can't be tripping over your feet when you're on the road. Next time, I want you to breathe more deeply and try to be a bit more calm. Pika scrambled to a sitting position, suddenly serious, looking intently across the road. She knew her mother was right. She needed to be twice as good as her siblings to make up for her eye. The others waited on the far side for the right moment. Pika watched and listened. Don't do it. Not yet, they whispered. The rumbling feeling intensified, and a truck passed with a howl. She held her breath, hearing Lamar give the all clear to the other two. The second group scambled across the road safely. Kai and Sage having a similar reaction to their siblings, laughing with relief. The first time is always the worst, said Gree. Now, let's go exploring. Stay close. They sat out along a footpath and hit a road that was rimmed on either side by a deep ditch. We stay in the ditch. It's dry this time of year, called Lamar as he jumped down. They loped along the ditch, occasionally having to pop onto the street to cross the road. The roads were very quiet, and only a few times did Lamar bark, Freeze! Down! And they would all crouch in the ditch as the car passed, its headlights illuminating the road. Once they came across a crowd of humans, who were walking and talking loudly. Following Gree and Lamar's lead, the pups crouched into the ditch, not moving, and the humans walked right past them, just a few feet away. As they faded into the distance, Pika let out her breath. She couldn't believe that they hadn't been detected. The humans seemed so clumsy and stupid for creatures who were so powerful. Lamar led them in the ditch until they got to a wide expanse of pavement leading up to a series of large, low metal buildings. He stopped to face them. As you travel, you have to be very careful where you go. We'll teach you where it is safe to go. This city has many other coyotes, and they will defend their territory. At first, make sure you stick to the places you know, and the ones we show you. No coyotes are defending you. As you get bigger, you can always decide for yourself where you want to go, and always keep your eyes peeled for dangers. Other coyotes, humans, dogs, anything that moves, really. He paused, making sure they were listening. This area is sometimes a good place to find rats. Spread out and try hunting it on your own. Remember what I've always told you. You have to put yourself into the mind of the animal you are trying to reach and then catch. What is their mood? What are they doing? You must anticipate their moves and be one step ahead of them. Pika set off to hunt, but an hour passed with no luck. A few times she got close, but either made some kind of a small noise that alerted the rat to her presence, or missed it on the pounce. When she heard Grease bark to come back together again, she trotted back, frustrated. She was the last one to arrive, and she could hear her siblings talking excitedly about their kills. As they found increasing success hunting, she felt more and more sensitive about her failure. Would her eye injury stop her from ever learning how to hunt? And if that happened, would her family continue to take care of her when she was an adult? She didn't think they would be able to, especially next spring when there were new mouths to feed. How'd it go, Sage? Or Pika? Sage looked at her with a hopeful smile. Pika hesitated. Great, I caught one. Even as she said it, she felt ashamed. As her siblings pelted her with questions, she had to quickly make up her story. At the end, she saw Gree looking at her carefully, head cocked, but her mother said nothing. Pika quickly suggested, let's keep going, and she was relieved when her parents nodded and took the lead again. Over the next few hours, the family made a wide arc, slowly returning to their starting point. Pika's head swam with all the new things she had seen. She had learned how to hide under a parked car when a human walked past if there was no ditch. Taba showed them how to find edible food in the humans' backyard gardens. Kai found a dead raccoon, And they all learned that if something smells really bad, it could be dangerous to eat. It was still dark when they reached the home. Excuse me. It was still dark when they reached the first road again, but all the pups were ready to go home. They were exhausted. This time, Gree made them cross one at a time, each checking with her when they thought it was safe, and then scrambling across. Pika went first again, more confident this time. At the other edge of the road, instead of diving into the bushes, she jumped gracefully off the embankment and turned around to watch her siblings. Dane was next, followed by Kai, and she was how proud and how confident and strong they both looked. She felt older somehow, as if crossing the road had caused them also to cross an invisible line between puppyhood and independence. As Sage prepared to cross, Pika frowned. She could see her sister's face, and it only showed terror. She crouched for about a minute by the roadside, seemingly frozen. Nothing passed. Finally, she said hesitantly, "Now?" "Go now," replied Lamar. "Okay," she responded weakly. She took a step and then paused. "Now!" commanded Gree. Pika could feel a gentle rumble. It was still around the corner, but Sage had to start moving immediately. "Okay," she repeated, taking a few more steps into the road. The truck's lights flashed around the corner, and all of a sudden time seemed to speed up. Sage was illuminated in the headlights as the truck hurtled toward her. "Go, Sage, go now!" Pika cried, as the truck bore down on her sister. Sage looked at her, and something seemed to unlock. She scrambled awkwardly across the road and drove into the ditch as the truck roared past. Gree and Lamar followed immediately after. "What happened there, Sage?" Gree questioned sharply. I don't know. I just couldn't move." Sage walked over to Pika and nuzzled her. "Don't let it happen again." "Okay," said Gree, as she paused, breathing hard. "I bet you are all tired. Let's go home." As Pika followed her mother back, she breathed in the cool, fresh air and felt the sounds and smells of the city fade away. She hadn't realized before just how lucky they were to live in this oasis. It was calm and peaceful, and they were able to see danger from far away. She wondered, after having traveled through the city for the first time, what it was like for all the other coyotes who lived in abandoned lots and under small bushes in big backyards. She couldn't imagine having the chance to lie around in the sun and play with golf balls. With thoughts of cars, dogs, and raccoons, the pups snuggled deep under the bushes and fell fast asleep. So that is the end of Street Shadows and Chapter 5, Crossing. And Chapter 6 now we will revisit Scruff again in our next chapter of Street Shadows. This is Mr. Bob, and thank you very much. Have a good day.